Hey guys, it's Jeremy here with Metal Music Meltdown, back with another video. What I have for today, guys, is another ranking of the albums video, starting off the year fresh with a great video. We're going to tackle the mighty Mastodon, always been one of my favorite bands of the last 20 years. Just a really good progressive heavy metal band, great riffing, through the roof instrumentation, great vocal harmonies. Just a really good band, they never really disappoint. They have 8 studio albums in total. I have physical copies of 7 of them. The only one I don't have is the newest one, Hush and Grim. I haven't got a chance to pick it up yet. I'm just kind of waiting for it to become more of a decent price. They formed in 2000. They're from Atlanta, Georgia. They've had pretty much the same lineup since the beginning. Troy Sanders on bass and vocals, Brent Hines on lead guitars and vocals, Bill Kellner on rhythm guitar and backing vocals, and Bran Daler on drums and backing vocals. Just a really good mix of heavy riffs, kind of sludgy in parts, a lot of progressive elements. Just love the sound of these guys. They're very distinct sounding. You can't mistake them for anyone else. So let's jump right in, guys. When I did this ranking, there's a couple albums that really stood out to me as the top 2 or 3 automatically. And there's 2 albums that kind of stood out to being in the bottom. And the others in the middle were pretty close. I just kind of put them in a sequence as best I could, kind of based on which ones I listened to more than the others. So let's jump right in, guys. I don't want the video to be too long. At the bottom, at number 8, again, this is my preference, just more on based on how much I listen to them. And that's kind of what I based it on, based on my preference. So at the bottom at number 8, I have their debut, Remission. Still a really solid album, put through Relapse Records. Really heavy album, really more, raw sounding album. Didn't quite have as many of the progressive elements that I love Mastodon for. That's kind of why this is at the bottom. But some really good tunes on here, really great riffing, and just a really killer debut. Nothing to be upset about, just something had to be at the bottom. And the next one, I went with The Hunter. Some good tunes on here. Black Tongue was pretty good. Curl and Burl was pretty good, the other single. But there's a couple songs in here that were kind of misses for me. The title track, The Thickening, I didn't really like as much as well. There's a couple songs in here that didn't quite hit for me quite right. And this just isn't an album I quite go back to as much. I find it didn't have as much complexity to it, it's more kind of straightforward. Had some good earworm songs in here, but overall, just not quite as good as some of the other stuff. And at number 6, I have the one album I didn't have yet, the newest one, Hushed and Grim. This might be surprising for some people, because I know a lot of people had this at their top of the list that year it came out. It's a double album. I love the progressive elements in it. It's a very dark and depressing sounding album. The concept is over grievance, and it's just a very somber album. I love the atmosphere of it, but I find the album to be dragged out a little bit too long. It's 80-something minutes, I think. And I just found it could have been condensed and edited down a little bit more, in my opinion, and just been more of a killer single album. But pretty solid stuff, really good guitar playing. I love the atmosphere in the album. It's just one I don't really go back to as much. It's just too long for my taste. And at number 5, I went with One More Around the Sun. All these album covers from these guys are always killer too, really cool looking stuff. This one's a little bit more commercial sounding, a little bit more accessible, but some really killer earworms on this one. Songs that get stuck in your head, like Once More Around the Sun, the title track, Feast Your Eyes, Tread Lightly, High Road. Just some really earworms on this one. Kind of leaning more towards the more mainstream sound, but still have a lot of progressive elements. And just a really fun album to listen to. But just not quite as good as some of the others, but really solid. At number 4, I went with Emperor of Sand, Sultan's Curse, Precious Stones, Root Remains, Word of the Wise. Just some really good tunes on here. Really heavy stuff, great kind of sludgy riffs on this one. A lot of great progressive elements I love them for. And it's everything I love Mastodon for. Went back a little bit more to their older sound, a little bit heavier. And just a killer album. I was really surprised with this when it came out. It was a really, really good album. And my top three were pretty much my top three automatically. I kind of knew those ones right away. Number three, I have their second album, Leviathan. Masterpiece of an album. It's based on the Moby Dick story, of course, but songs like Blood and Thunder is a freaking monster track, Iron Tusk, Megalodon, just some really banger songs on here. Super heavy, but really complex and progressive. Probably the most progressive metal in their catalog, in my opinion. And just a killer album. A must-have in anyone's collection. If you're not familiar with early Mastodon stuff, definitely get this album. It's killer. And my number one and two have always been my favorite two, based on how much I listen to them. Number two might be surprising for some people, but I went with Crack the Sky. Most people have this at number one. I agree, it is an all-time classic album. It's a masterpiece from top to bottom. Oblivion, Divinations, just a killer album. Super great concept album, killer artwork, iconic artwork as well. Definitely one of the best albums in the last 20 years. The only reason this isn't my number one is because the other one I do have a number one, which you can probably guess by now, I just listen to overall a lot more. And I think as individual songs, I prefer the songs on my other pick a little bit more than this one. This one as a cohesive album is probably their best. But in terms of the individual songs, I always kind of find myself going back to listen to. It was the other album. And that only leaves the monstrous Blood Mountain. I think this might have been my introduction to the band, I believe. I have it on vinyl as well. But songs like The Wolf is Loose, Sleeping Giant, Blade Catcher, Crystal Skull, Colony of Birchmen, of course, was their breakthrough single, monster single for them. This is just a collection of bangers, top to bottom. So many iconic songs that I just love from this band. And yeah, this had to be my number one. Killer artwork as well. I always love their artwork. The font is awesome. It's always symmetrical looking, cool color schemes, really killer stuff. Yep, this is my number one, Mastodon. Let me know down below what your number one pick would be, or your ranking in general. And I definitely have to pick up that new album still. I'm trying to find it for a decent price. It's always like $25-30 on CD, so I'm trying to find it somewhere for a decent price. But let me know down below, guys, your ranking of Mastodon from your least favorite to favorite. And thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for more videos to come this week, and keep it metal.